If you're curious to hear a little music from our guest Carla Lucero, who we spoke to in our most recent episode, check out E4TT's annual concert of music by women and non-binary composers, Midnight Serenades, on January 25th. Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we're joined by Dawn Norfleet, who we spoke to in January 2022. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us. You come from a musical family. Who is musical and what do they play? Any memories that were foundational to your musical life?
Well, I come from a musical family. My brother is a keyboardist. Right now he's playing with the Temptations and playing and singing.
Ooh.
Not one of the dancers, but he's yeah, he sings background and he plays keyboards. My mother was a professional singer. She was a music education major at Texas Southern University, where she met my father, who was a professional musician, an entertainer. He played organ, played piano, and sang. So when they met in college, they were both music education majors, and they got married. And then they decided to go on the road as the Mel Dawn duo. So even though my mother's name is Joyce, Dawn was her stage name. And so she named me after her stage name.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. And so my mother, very practical minded. She left the touring world behind. They had a very interesting life in the 60s, touring, at the time, segregated clubs in the Midwest. It's a Black duo. So they were kind of, I guess, yeah. So anyway, yeah. They toured segregated clubs, playing light jazz and stuff like that, and then settled in LA. And my mother, like I said, practical minded. She left the touring life behind and began teaching music in LA, South LA. And so she actually produced an opera at a high school in Watts, California. And it was All in the Night Visitors by Giancarlo Menotti, right? And it was starring. It featured all faculty and students. So and she played piano, and there was one flutist. So together they did the whole. They were the accompaniment of the entire opera. And my brother, who was 9 at the time, played all. So I was 5, and I remember that. It was it just had a profound impact on me. I used to walk to the library and check out the album, right? And I played it to death, All in the Night Visitors. So that album has, just that recording, that opera just has a very fond place in my heart. Yeah. And when I was in grad school, imagine how I felt when Giancarlo Menotti was a guest, came to speak as a guest at my grad school. And so I was just like sitting there fanning out, and he was just so gracious. We have some photos from that production where my brother is singing with one of the students who was one of the shepherds or something. And it turns out that the shepherd is now in a Temptations tribute band, and my brother is now playing with the Temptations. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, yeah. So my mother taught choir, and so I heard a lot of choir music, and I vocal music in general. She was a voice. Voice and piano major, I think. Well, focus, because her major was actually music education. So I heard a lot of vocal music, and I think that influenced me.
How did this experience add to your compositional experience, or is it just part of who you are?
Both. I think vocals have a very important part of my my musical voice in general, whether it's you know, instrumental music or what I choose to write, or in my, let's say, non-classical writing. So yeah, I've written a choral piece that won an award, and yeah, so and I've written for soprano and piano and mezzo and violin. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Dawn Norfleet, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times, and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to audio engineer extraordinaire Stephanie Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts, and tune in next week for Good Measure.